have like the parent and then the 3 kids. So quadrilateral is a 4-sided shape and it has 3 kids. Trapezoid, parallelogram, and kite. All of these are quadrilateral and it has all the characteristics of quadrilateral, it being a 4-sided shape. But then each of the kids have their own characteristics as well. So parallelogram is what we saw last week, so we're just going to quickly go over that. For today, we're just going to fill in like this center area here, and then tomorrow we're going to fill in the outside. So leave room, so that way you have room to fill in those tomorrow, just so you know. Okay, so first of all, parallelogram looks like this. We're just going to draw a parallelogram like this. We're actually going to draw 3 of them, so that way we can properly like notate it. So I'm drawing 3 parallelograms here. Okay, and we learned that for a parallelogram, the opposite sides are parallel to each other. So this side is parallel to this one, and this side is parallel to this one. And if you have 2 sets of parallel sides, you have a parallelogram. We also learned that in a parallelogram, opposite sides are congruent. So if you have the length of this one, it's equal to this, and then this length is equal to this down here. So opposite sides are congruent. I'm going to zoom in even further too. And then also opposite angles are equal. So this angle is the same measure as this one, and this angle is the same measure as this one. Opposite angles are equal. And then one last thing, consecutive angles are supplementary. So like if this is angle A and B, let's call this A plus B equals 180 degrees. So consecutive angles are supplementary. So whether it's these 2 added together or these 2, they are supplementary, equal to 180 degrees. Then one more thing about parallelograms, the diagonals, they bisect each other. So we have a diagonal here and a diagonal here. The diagonals hit at the midpoint, and like this is the same length as this, and then this here is the same length as this. Diagonals bisect each other. Okay, so that is a parallelogram. That's all the characteristics of parallelogram. So a parallelogram has all the characteristics of quadrilateral, and then it has its own specific characteristics. Then parallelogram has 2 kids. So the 2 kids are called a rhombus and a rectangle. So 2 babies, rhombus and rectangle. And again, keeping room on the sides for tomorrow's stuff. Okay, so rhombus and rectangle have all the characteristics of its parent, the parallelogram, as well as its grandparent, the quadrilateral. It's a 4-sided shape for quadrilateral, and then all of these characteristics for parallelogram apply to these shapes. So for a rectangle, we'll start there since it's probably more familiar to you. Rectangle looks like this, as you know. And a rectangle, opposite sides are parallel, opposite sides are equal, the opposite angles are equal, the diagonals bisect each other, and then in addition, it has 4 90-degree angles, 4 right angles. And because a rectangle does follow all these rules, it's also a parallelogram. So you could classify it as that too. And then the second thing with a rectangle, the diagonals so the diagonals are going to bisect each other. But in addition to that, the diagonals are congruent. Diagonals are congruent, meaning that they are the same length. So if I have a rectangle A, B, C, D, I can say that segment AC is congruent to segment BD. The diagonals are congruent. And then since the diagonals also bisect each other, actually each one of these segments are the same length. So this is the same length as this is the same length as this, and this is the same length as this. So it creates a situation where you have a bunch of isosceles triangles, and also congruent triangles. Like these two triangles would be congruent, these two triangles would be congruent, and that can help us find like angle measure and stuff if we need it. Okay, and then over here for rhombus, a rhombus is a parallelogram, but all the sides are congruent. So like it looks like this. I'm trying to make all the sides the same length as best I can. So it looks like a parallelogram, but the difference is that all the sides are the same length. All sides congruent. Also, so again, all sides are the congruent, and then the diagonals are actually perpendicular, so they make a 90-degree angle. So diagonals are perpendicular. The abbreviation for perpendicular, the symbol looks like this, and it means that the diagonals make a 90-degree angle there. So all four of these angles are actually 90 degrees. So like 90, 90, 90, etc. And one more thing with a rhombus, the diagonals actually bisect the angles. So diagonals bisect the angles. So here I drew one of the diagonals, and then what it means by it bisects this angle is like this angle over here is the same measure as this over here. This is the same measure as this. And since opposite angles are equal, then all four of these angles are actually equal. Because remember, since it's a parallelogram, it follows these rules where opposite angles are equal. So then all four of these are equal. Okay, so how it kind of works is like a rhombus is also a parallelogram and also a quadrilateral because of how this is set up. A rectangle can also be classified as a parallelogram and can also be classified as a quadrilateral. And we're going to build one more part today. So rhombus and rectangle are going to have a baby. Siblings aren't supposed to have babies, but they do. And it creates a square. So rhombus and rectangle have a baby. They call it a square. And so a square has all the characteristics of a rectangle, a rhombus, a parallelogram, and a quadrilateral. And a square, as you know, is just like perfect, perfect, perfect. So we're going to draw a square. And so a square has all the characteristics of all of its ancestors. All the sides are the same length, like a rhombus. Opposite sides are parallel. And then like a rectangle, it has all the 90-degree angles. And then just to show how the diagonals work, so drawing one more square so I can show the diagonals. So here's our square. This is supposed to be a square, like all the sides are equal, etc. And then we have our diagonals of a square, and the diagonals follow all the rules of the ancestors too. So the diagonals make a 90-degree angle, like the rhombus. It also bisects all of these corners, and all these corners are 90-degree angles like its dad, the rectangle. And so since these diagonals bisect these angles, then you have like 45-degree angles all the way around. 45, 45, etc. Like everything's 45 here, and then these are 90. And yeah, etc. Let's keep going around if you want, but I'll stop there. Oh, and then let's see what these lines are all going to be the same length too, because it's like a rectangle. Like there's just a bunch of equal parts. It's getting kind of crowded, but yeah. Okay, so we're going to stop there, and then we're going to move over to the notes so we can practice some problems on this, and then we'll finish filling this out tomorrow with trapezoid and kite. So just set this aside so that way you can use it. I'm going to end this, and we're going to transition over to the notes.